Næst langar mig að bjóða velkominn erlenda gestafyrirlesaran okkar hér í dag. Hann heitir Fenton, en hann sannkallaður ofurfrumkvöðull sem meðal annars stofnaði Couchsurfing sem hefur á síðustu árum vaxið yfir 15 milljón notenda. Það skemmtilegt að segja frá því að þróunin á því verkefni hófst einmitt á Íslandi þegar hann gerði svona smá tilraun á því hverjir myndu mögulega bjóða honum að gista á sófanum hjá sér á Íslandi. Þetta var í kringum árið 2000 og ótrúlegt að sjá þennan vöxt á fyrirtækinu síðan þá, 15 milljónir notenda. Hann hefur á síðustu árum tekið þátt í fjöldanum öllum af startup verkefnum alls staðar í heiminum og hann hefur hitt okkar brotasinu hér líka og hann meðal annars og mun meðal annars koma inn á traust í viðskiptum hér á eftir. Dear Casey, we are pleased to have you here with us today, and we thank you for taking your time to come and be here with us. We also thank you for taking your time to meet all of our teams. The stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, it's a pleasure to be here today with you all here in Iceland, in Reykjavik, where part of my story begins 18 years ago. So I'm excited to share that with you. It's great to be back here and great to see some old and familiar faces. It was also really wonderful to see what the latest startups coming out of Iceland, especially around tourism, are. To meet with everybody yesterday, I had 10 different startups or so, and hear about the ideas and the companies that are coming together. It's quite a different world than it was 18 years ago when I was here. I remember when I landed at the airport 18 years ago, that was a way different airport, that's for sure. Yeah, and I think what was kind of interesting that I noticed yesterday in meeting with all of the startups is that a lot of these startups are about experiences, experientialism. It's not just your typical tourism anymore. It's not, walk up to a picture of the statue of Leif Erikson, snap a picture of this cathedral, go home. It's no longer that. It's all of these amazing ideas that immerse you in the nature, immerse you with the people, with the stories. It's gotten me really excited. I mean, for somebody who spent a lot of my time and years trying to really get out and see the world and doing that a lot with locals. It's great to see that there are ideas and new companies being created that have a lot to do with really getting a backstage pass to the world. And so that's something I'm passionate about. And happy to be here with you all today. So my story begins, I just turned 40. So my story begins many, many years ago. And my story has a lot to do with trust and tourism, of course. Couchsurfing being a way to experience the world. But people ask me, well, what is trust? Trust to me is different maybe than trust to other people. 20 different people, 20 different answers. And so trust maybe to you, it could be a measure of predictability. Can I trust that? How can I trust or predict that person? But it may also mean, does this person understand my needs, and are they looking out for me? That might be trust as well. So trust means different things to different people. I first started to get to think about trust when I was living in a small town in Brownfield, Maine. And I was in high school, and I thought, I could trust anybody in the town I was growing up in. There's just 1,000 people in that town. You're walking down the street, you see someone, you could trust them. You could, they're probably, because you know them. Then everybody, they're all tied together in a community. But a few years later, in 1997, I went on a trip to Egypt. And I had the opportunity to, with one of the locals, there were no tourists in Egypt. Trust was at a very all-time low, in fact. Some tourists were murdered outside of a temple. And so I decided that I had to, it was a great time to go. And one of the locals took me and my friend on a journey. And it was in the middle of the night. And we asked him, can we climb the pyramids? He said, no way. And we met his family, and we smoked hookah with his granddads, and he finally trusted us, and then we decided to trust him. And it was through that an introduction to one of the locals, that we were able to climb the pyramids. You know, the first night we're there in Egypt, which of course now I know is probably not very legal, but back then I didn't know anything. I was just 18 years old, and what do I know? It was an amazing experience, and I think even more amazing was that I was able to have this experience with him and his family, and it really blew my mind that just complete strangers, if you trusted them, if you knew who to trust, amazing things could happen, beautiful things. A few years later, I went on my next trust experience or experiment was I went to Burning Man. And Burning Man is a festival in the desert of Nevada. Some people may have heard of it. It's very difficult to get there. You have to do a lot of planning, and it takes some money, a few $1,000s. So everybody you meet there has been filtered out by the filter of difficulty to get there. People are very, very trustworthy. It's like, what happens when you walk around and every single person looks like they have a little "I'm trustworthy" icon above their head, right? What does that look like? It was the first time that I got to experience that super cooperation. You can trust anyone. It's powerful. What is that like? So it made me start to think about a website where you could know who you could trust. You could trust everyone because you could see how trustworthy they were, right? So this is where the story I think gets very interesting. It was year 2000, and I had this idea for this website, Couchsurfing, where you're going to stay on a stranger's couch around the world. But I didn't know if it was a good idea. I didn't know if anyone else would like this idea. So I needed a test, right? And in startup parlance, we say minimal viable product, right? Does that ring a bell to people in here? Yeah, I think so. Minimum viable product. My minimum viable product was to simulate a profile on the Couchsurfing website. So the future website that I imagined it to be. But I didn't want to do all this work if there was no there. So I constructed an email, and I checked out the University of Iceland student directory, and I figured out that if I could hack in a little bit, a very small hack, by typing in people's names, and of course the only Icelandic name I knew at the time was Björk, so I typed in Björk, and up came some Björk, Stephen's daughters, and so on. And I said, oh, okay, it's people's last names, their father's first name, okay, yes. So I downloaded 1,500 names and email addresses, and constructed the spam message to all these students saying, can I stay on your couch? Here's who I am, dear Bjorn, I'm coming to Iceland, I want to stay. And I had between 50 and 100 people say, yes, come stay on my couch. Blew my mind. So I came and stayed with some really, really cool people for a whole weekend, and I was very shy at the time, and these people showed me the backstage pass to Reykjavik, Blue Lagoon, driving all over the countryside. We even went onto the U.S. military base to go to the Kentucky Fried Chicken. Which I thought was very funny that was what they wanted to do more than anything. Yeah, it's very funny. And so I have to take a little drink of water here, I think. So I learned that people did want to meet a local, that locals do want to meet strangers if they have the right information. And so I showed them that I was trustworthy in this email, and I showed them pictures of me and my personal philosophy. And lo and behold, other people in the world do like this idea, even in countries as far off and as awesome as Iceland. And so this begs the question, what is the value of trust? And what is the value of trust within tourism or anywhere, right? This data, a lot of people haven't really thought in this way, so it's kind of interesting to share this. I'm really psyched to share this. And this research came out of Denmark, actually. So a few years ago, they figured out that GDP, speaking of GDP, there is about 25% of GDP that is maybe driven by education and knowledge within a country, and maybe 25% physical infrastructure, but there was this missing 25% that they think now is related to trust. So it's kind of like this. The more trusting and trustworthy people are in a country, the less control infrastructure you need. You don't need to control them as much if they're trustworthy. Right? So this is really interesting to think about. And you can see in the Scandinavian countries and here in Iceland, there's a lot of trust, so you don't need maybe lawyers. You don't need as much. You don't need bars on your window. You don't need as many contracts. So that's just like greases the wheels of an economy. It makes sense? Yeah. So that's, I think, really powerful information. The less control you need, like you could see in Brazil here, you have 5% of people say that they trust, that people are generally trustworthy. So that's interesting to see. So boom, Couchsurfing's born. I see this is a great idea, and we should go forward. So I was living in Alaska at the time, programming my butt off, and freezing in the cold. I don't know if you guys know about that. And it was really a powerful time. Launched Couchsurfing in 2003, and then started to take off 2004, 2005, 2006. It just starts tripling every year. And there's people all over the world creating meetings and events and having life-changing experiences together. And it is perhaps the largest trust experiment of all time. There was trust tourism for sure, experiment. There's more, people, hundreds of millions of trust experiments. And out of those hundreds of millions of experiences, the one piece of feedback that I've got that's really clear is people do love other people, and they want to trust them, and they do trust them. And that strangers are kind of friends you just haven't met yet. So if you have the right trust information, you can have a transformed life. That you can, if you have the right trust information, that you can accelerate your relations and your transactions, your life, your world. When you're traveling, when you're seeing the world, you can accelerate all that. People started asking me, well, how did you build Couchsurfing? What did you do? What was the kind of the key ingredients? And one of the key ingredients, I think, is that you have to build a culture of trust within your startup. So how do you do that? So I think this book outlines it pretty well, this book, Tribal Leadership. And it basically, what research shows is that a quarter of companies, people they feel like life sucks. The feeling of working there is life sucks. It's not very fun. And people are just surviving. They're just getting by. Now, 50% of companies, they have this feeling, about 49%, they have this feeling that, I'm great and you're not. It's all about gaming for yourself. I'm going to get more by, looking out for myself and maybe making some alliances. But in companies like this, information's power. People hold on to that information. They don't give it out freely. That means everybody in the organization has a different picture of reality. And if everybody has a different picture, you can't very easily scale your company, right? How do you distribute decision-making power if nobody has a complete picture? They can't make very good decisions. So that makes it very hard for that kind of company to go and scale quickly. Now, if you're in a culture where it's a super cooperation culture, it's this feeling of we're great. We're doing this for the honor of doing this. We're doing this because we want to do this together. There's all this great stuff. And that's the kind of company that will scale. Everybody shares all the information, and the company can scale. So one of the next lessons we learned was that of transferable trust. So that if you have transferable trust, this is really the engine that accelerates your relationships and transactions. This is the engine of Couchsurfing. Somebody says, hey, Emily, you want to stay at my house? You want to stay on my couch? I'd love that, but I'm not home right now. Oh, but wow, you have 20 positive references. Apparently, you're a very trustworthy person. The key is in the garden. I'll see you in 2 days. Right? Happens every day in Couchsurfing, hundreds of times a day. Transferable trust. It's really powerful. Can change your life. The next piece, some people start to ask, well, how do you make your group? How do you make your teams? You're building software. You've got a startup. Well, how do you make your team really get things done? What is it? Is it using the right software? Is it, what is it? Is it getting the right investor? I think one of the key things is this. It's making sure that you have givers on these teams. So the idea here is there are givers, matchers, and takers. Now, a taker wants to just get as much as they can for themselves, right? And when a team feels like there's a taker there, everybody shuts down. People stop giving as much as they can. Things get weird. You don't want to have takers on a team. It's better if you have givers, and givers they're not keeping track of who has taken what amount or received what. They're just giving. And that is how you maximize your little economy of getting things done. But if you have matchers, well, that's a little bit slower, but still okay. So the moral of the story is no takers. And one of the companies I'm working on now, Massly, and we're renaming to Upstock. Very excited about this. We're actually launching here in Iceland first, it looks like, with KPMG. So it's very, very excited. But what we're looking to do is basically help companies give the right incentive or the right alignment using equity or stock to make everyone a giver. So if people feel alignment, then you don't need as much inspiring leadership. Inspiring leadership is hard to do, especially for me. Maybe I'm an introverted tech programmer person. Well, it might be harder for me to inspire people, but hopefully in time I'll learn. Where's the future? Where are we headed when we think of trust and we think of, I don't know, the world, I guess? It's a good question. Here at TechCrunch, a tech magazine, online magazine from the Silicon Valley area, thinks that in the future, trust is going to be the number one piece of currency. More than money. It's going to matter more than money. It's going to be the number one thing that's going to determine whether you can do something or connect in some way or not. There's even a Black Mirror episode recently about this. Some of you may have seen the Black Mirror episode. A dystopian take on it. So what about credit scores? We're seeing this question of social credit coming up more and more. In fact, it's coming up in China. We're seeing reading about China instituting a social credit score. Maybe some of you have seen that. Is there going to be a universal reputation system or some of them? I say yes. It's just inevitable. I've been watching this space a long time. I can't see a world where this doesn't just naturally evolve. So I'm thinking about, like, well, is that good? Is it bad? It depends. It depends on if it's a system that is here for people. Is it here to enhance your life, or is it here to control your life? I think that's the deciding factor. So a little bit of background. This right here, non-transferable trust. This is silent trust. Couchsurfing, you have non-transferable trust. You can get trust in Couchsurfing, but you can't take it over to eBay and use it very easily, right? Doesn't work very well. But there are starting to become systems where you can take that trust. Working on a system called Wonder, which is you have universal trust scores that you can take to other systems. FICO in the United States is a financial universal system. It's interesting that is being used in all different walks of life in the United States. But then there are these dystopian systems. There is a Black Mirror episode, like I mentioned. It shows what would a future look like where trust was used to control people. It'd be probably not a very fun world to live in. And China is kind of doing that right now. Like I mentioned, China, they have a trust system now that if you have a low score, you can't fly, you can't get on public transportation, you can't do a lot of things. So it's basically used in a way to control or conform people. But what we're seeing is there are these trust systems that are starting to crop up elsewhere in the world that are a lot more utopian. They're a lot more diverse. They're promoting diversity, and they're promoting more trusting activity and more trusting economies. So I would ask you for a second to close your eyes and imagine it's 5 years from now. Where are we going to be? What's it going to feel like? What is the world going to feel like? Is it going to be a world that we have these kinds of systems, these trust and control systems that are controlling us? I certainly hope not. That's not what I want. Certainly not what I would like to see. Or are we going to see beautiful systems that are enhancing our lives and helping us quickly see who is trustworthy and allowing us to accelerate our relationships, our transactions, our travels? I'd like to choose the latter. And there are many upcoming, new CEOs in this room, maybe old CEOs too. And we have the opportunity, and anyone working in startups has the opportunity to create systems that drive the future. So I ask you all to do what you can and choose wisely. Thank you.